What's up? My name is Justin. Today I'm here with my brother Alex, and today we are going to be giving you guys our 2 cents on the 2015 NBA Draft, which is coming up June 25th. What we call is a mock draft. So
For you retards out there.
Yes, we're going to give just basically a plain and simple, straightforward who we think each team should pick. 15 teams.
And justify why. We're doing the lottery 1 through 15. The back end of the draft, 15 through 30, is 8 boring, 2 too long, and 3 no one gives a shit. Half the players are out of the league in 2 years anyway. So we did the lottery straight up. We split the picks, odds, evens. No trades, like I said, straight up. We're going to do analysis of the picks. We kind of, basically just as a prerequisite, we're just basically 2 college kids. Like to talk shit, like to argue. Please comment, rate, subscribe. Love to get in an argument or conversation with you, a bigoted conversation.
And if you can't tell by now, hopefully at the end of this video, we take this shit very seriously.
Obviously.
So, yeah.
Sponsored by Coors Light. But so I had odds, so I'll start off with the first pick here. It's delicious Rocky Mountain.
Good shit right here.
Anyway, so it was the Minnesota Timberwolves. They got a logjam. They're kind of in between a rebuild. Zach LaVine was a great pick. Wiggins is obviously a fucking tank. Maple Jordan. But they kind of got a logjam at the 1, and they don't really have a depth at the 5. They have Pekovic, who they're going to trade. He's going to be an expiring. He's got like $12 million on his deal.
And my fault. Just to have a little quick, intake on the whole team as a whole. They went 16-66 last season, and that the fact that they're in the West, if you don't win 30 games, you're not making the playoffs. So
not even if you don't win 40, 45 games.
The West is so competitive; it's way different than the East. So that's their biggest problem. So seeing as they got the number 1 pick, that's a big help for them.
And overall, they just need to, like I was saying, they just need to improve. They need to get more talent into the roster overall. The wings are set. LaVine and Rubio, I think, are good pieces. Besides that, they need help with the 2 maybe, and they need help with the 4 and 5. So with that being said, there were a lot of players to choose from, obviously. And I decided to go with Jahlil Okafor, the center from Duke. 6'11", 275. Very well coached, obviously. Coach K is a legend, one of the best coaches of our generation. He's the youngest Duke player to have a 20-20 game. And he was a heralded prospect. I mean, he's got a good post game. He doesn't really project defensively. He's got slow feet, but he's got a high IQ. As I said, he was well coached. I think he projects to be a Greg Monroe as his floor, a guy who can adjust to double teams offensively. He's been through that. He can either kick it out when the slide comes, or he can just cut through it and have a good post move. He's got a really good spin move. He's slow. He's kind of lethargic, but then once he gets down in the post, he turns into Hakeem Olajuwon. I project him to be kind of, I said Greg Monroe, but maybe his ceiling is Al Jefferson, a guy that can put 22 and 11 up per year. Like I said, not a very good defender, but I just felt like they needed someone at the 5. They can move Pekovic and maybe get another pick for him. So,
all right. So with the number 2 pick in this year's draft, the Los Angeles Lakers won the lottery for that spot. Them being a high franchise, high market, very proficient team,
polarizing community.
Championship caliber every year. It's surprised that they got the number 2 slot. They went 21-61 last season. Very shitty. I'm a fan.
Especially in the West.
Not going to go in depth. In the West, they struggle. Their strengths are they have a fairly younger nucleus. They're in the rebuilding stage. They're going to have Kobe's contract come off the books next season. So that's $25 million right there off one player. Nash's contract's coming off the books next season too.
It already came off. They got $8 million. They have a lot of cap room this year. They're going to have cap room next year. And as he said, they have a young core. They got Randall. They got Clarkson. Lynn is a good complementary piece off the bench. Randall hasn't even played. He's basically a young Zebo. I think. If you look out, Hill's a good player. Jordan Hill's a good complementary player. He's playing on a good contract. He's not a starting center in the West. Okay, that's just a fact. I think if you look at their team, they need help at the wing and they need help at the center. So with that being said, as you just said, they will draft Kristaps Porzingis, center out of Latvia, Euroball. He's one of those weird ass Baltic countries.
FIFA. He's a FIBA player.
FIFA. Anyway. He's got a
FIFA.
PS4 account. No, he's a good player. He's 7'1". He's lanky as shit. He's got like an inward chest. He needs to bulk up. I think once he gets to the NBA and stops eating like chicken gizzards in the hills of Latvia, and once he gets over here and gets with the Lakers of all teams, their training staff, and the regiment that they have, he'll gain weight. He's just a good shooter. He shot 37% from 3. He can step out. He's 7'1", and I think overall with a team, if you look at their nucleus. Let's say they go out and get a wing. Let's say the Lakers, let's say they get DeMarre Carroll. You got Jordan Clarkson at the 1, Kobe at the 2, Carroll at the 3, Randall at the 4, and Porzingis at the 5. He needs to bulk up. He might get out rebounded, but at the same time, that offense has 5 players that can shoot the 3. It's hard to defend. It's something new in the West, and Byron Scott knows how to develop young players, so I think it's a good pick overall. It swings back to me. I had the 3rd pick. That's a fucking odd number, so it's back with me. Who was it? 76ers.
The 76ers, they went 18-64 last season. Obviously not good, especially being in the East. Overall, just summary of their lineup. Isaiah Cannon, no name. That basically summarizes what the fuck the team is
You
about.
can go to your YMCA and get basically a comparable player to play the point guard position.
Pretty much, and that's not an understatement at all. That's straight to the
You
point.
can't win in the NBA with Isaiah Cannon being your starting point guard. Now, he can be a good complementary piece, just like Jordan Hill is for the Lakers, but they're not starting players. These are good 7th, 8th, 9th men. So with that being said, I think they got Covington at the 2. They got Dario Saric, who's a 4 overseas. They got Embiid and Noel at the 5. They're kind of stuffed in the front court. I felt like they needed some playmaking at the guard position. With that being said, might be a little reach. I took D'Angelo Russell, the combo guard out of Ohio State. He's 6'5". He shot 45% from 3. He is a true combo guard. It's kind of like in today's NBA, there's no positions. They kind of like to put you in a certain category or role. But I think he really is a combo guard. He ran the offense for Fab Mata at Ohio State. He can dribble in the half court. He can finish in transition. But at the same time, if he goes to Philly and he kicks it off to Robert Covington, who's spotting up for a 3 on the pick and roll, he can cut back door and have the ability to get open and score for himself off the ball. So I think he's just a good playmaker. I think he projects to be kind of a Jamal Crawford, a lanky wing player who can create for himself and hit threes. He's got a little bit of Mike Bibby in the fact that if he needs to hit a 3, an open 3 in a half-court offense, he can, and he will. So I think he's a good player. I think he could be an all-star someday. So swings back to you.
All right, with the 4th pick, I heard that. I took the reins of the New York Knicks, who went 17-65 this season. Obviously, a very, very trash team for the NBA. Now, the Timberwolves, in fact, had the worst record in the league. However, the Knicks are the Big Apple. They represent one of the most well-known markets in the whole NBA.
Yeah, it's a big market.
So they had much more televised games, meaning the public saw their games more. Meaning, we saw how bad of a team they are compared to the Timberwolves, who didn't get televised as much. Meaning, the New York Knicks fucking blew
Dick.
Santa's.
No one's watching Minnesota Timberwolf games. A lot of people get coverage, and a lot of people follow the Knicks. They love the Knicks. Spike Lee's out there every game. I don't know how he isn't blowing brains out.
Shumpert and J.R. Smith left to go to the Cleveland Cavaliers. That's how fucking bad.
That was a good deal. But anyway, the point of the fact is they're kind of in the same position as the 76ers in that they need to upgrade their whole roster. They have a lot of people at the wing. They got Giannis Antetokounmpo, who they drafted in the 2nd round last year. The Greek Freak's little brother. He's putting up double-doubles in Westchester. They have Cle Anthony Early, who's a complimentary piece. He's a young developmental player. They got fucking Melo, who's one of the best post-offensive players in the game, and he's 6'7". They got Hardaway Jr., who's often hurt. They could move him. I would like for them to move him. As a New Yorker, I would like for them to get rid of him. He's a good player, but he's inconsistent. So they have a lot of wing players. I think they need help with the 1. Calderon is a complimentary piece. Larkin's a complimentary piece. And at some point in the year, they had Cole Aldridge as their starting center, who is literally trash and missing a tooth. So they need to upgrade that position as well.
Yeah, so that being said, they will be choosing Karl Anthony Towns,
who played alongside Willie Cauley-Stein. He's a prep. He's from the Dominican. Went to Kentucky. Was for Coach Cal. He had some inconsistency issues offensively. Coach Cal actually, I think, benched him a few games for saying that he wasn't physical enough. He couldn't handle the low post physicality that was being given to him in the Division I basketball. But he's a jack of all trades kind of guy. He can block shots. He can run in transition. He can catch alley-oops. He can shoot mid-range and shoot threes. I've seen him shoot a couple threes. I don't like his mechanics of his shot. That'll get tuned up. But overall, I think while he's not worthy of a first overall pick because Jahlil Okafor has a particular skill that is elite, I think that he could be an all-star down the road. And I think, to me, he's kind of like a Tristan Thompson, someone that does everything very well. Tristan Thompson in the finals, good at the line. He rebounds, he blocks shots, he can shoot free throws, and that's kind of what I see Towns doing. And especially for the triangle offense that Phil Jackson runs, they need someone that can shoot. The more shooters, the better. And I think he's good in the pick and roll, and he can pick and pop. So I think that was a good pick. It swings back to me. Gorgeous.
He will
Who was it?
The Orlando Magic. Might I mention, 25-57 last season. Just 6 years ago, they were in the NBA Finals.
Dwight Howard.
They did lose 4-1 to the aforementioned Los Angeles Lakers. But
Yes, they did.
years go by and teams either get better or get worse. The Magic went downhill, obviously,
very quickly.
seeing as they have the 5th pick in this upcoming draft.
Mhm.
And yeah, they will be, you know,
Their roster
Recognized.
isn't very well. They
Take the
re-signed
reins.
Rob Hennigan, who I think is a very good GM. They're a funky team. I mean, they got Scott Skiles, who they signed as a coach. He's a defensive coach. I think, putting context to this pick, they're looking defense. But if you look at this team, they got Aaron Gordon, who was the 4th overall pick. They got Oladipo, Elfrid Payton. They got Mo Harkless, Andrew Nicholson, Vucevic. They have a lot of front court players. There's a logjam there, but at the same time, I think they need help. They need help and clarity in a direction that they need to go. And I looked at my board, and the best player on the board that fit a need for them was Willie Cauley-Stein, the person that played alongside Karl Anthony Towns in Kentucky. He's a defensive stopper, catches alley-oops. He's got a limited offensive game. He's got good hands. But mainly he's just a defensive stopper. To me, he projects to be a Tyson Chandler. He looks like Tyson Chandler. He fucking is light skinned. He's basically Tyson Chandler. And I think they need someone to play alongside Vucevic at the 4. I think Tobias Harris is going to walk in free agency no matter what their GM says. I think you put Aaron Gordon at the 3 or Mo Harkless at the 3, give them some playing time. These are lottery picks here that are just fucking wasting away on the bench. And you put Vucevic at the 4, who's a fringe all-star, 19-8 last year. He can shoot the mid-range, and he's got a good post game. And you put him with Willie Cauley-Stein, who can block the shit out of anything that's 2 feet from the rim. And you actually have something going there with Scott Skiles. So that's why I decided to make that pick.
Next up, we have the Sacramento Kings, who went 29-53 just last season. Might I mention the division they're in the Western Conference? They share a division with the Warriors, the Lakers, and the Suns, as well as the Clippers.
Obviously one of the best
Obviously, arguably the hardest division in all of NBA.
So they need to get their shit together. And considering they have probably the most annoying owner in basketball and one of the most convoluted front offices in any sports franchise, really. I mean, there's people in and out. Their GM got fired and is with another team. I didn't know that. I fucking watch sports all the fucking time. I didn't know that. They're making moves in and out all the time, so they need to figure out an identity, and they need to get the wheels turning in the West.
And because they're more of a younger team in the West, they have
okay
the
pieces.
sky's the limit for
Yes.
them in the West, because the West is always
If they can get their
very
shit
open.
together, they have a couple pieces, and
Yes.
and obviously, George Karl's a Hall of Fame coach. If Coors Light, if he can get their team together, they might have some continuity and some success. So.
Obviously, their strengths are at the bigs with Boogie. Obviously, arguably one of the top 2 centers in the game.
Yeah.
And he's young as fuck.
And they got Rudy Gay and they got Darren Collison, but I think if you look at their team, they need help at the 4. Jason Thompson, again, the argument with Jordan Hill and the argument with Isaiah Cannon. Jason Thompson is an NBA player, but he's not a starter in the fucking West. They need to upgrade the 4, and they need to upgrade their point guard position. Darren Collison, along with Andre Miller, who is a good teacher, Dr. Andre Miller, the post game, the fucking no-look passes. I'd love to fucking watch YouTube reruns of him, but at the same time, he's not going to run a Western Conference team into the fucking playoffs. So they need help at the 1 and they need help at the 4. So
Seeing as how their 1 is a bigger, strength that could help a team, they will be picking Emmanuel Mudiay.
one of the best players in the draft. I gush over this guy. He played over in China. He pulled a Brandon Jennings and got into SMU to play for Coach Larry Brown. He got sent over to China. I don't know if he smoked weed. I don't know if he did coke. I don't know if he bought a hooker. Whatever the fucking situation is, he was in China. And he ended up... I farted. And he ended up putting up good numbers, 18, 6, and 6. He's an athletic point guard. I think he's a John Wall light. I don't think he'll be as good as John Wall. John Wall's a fucking beast. Do the job. He's a goddamn beast. But at the same time, he's an athletic point guard. He relies on his athleticism. He's not a good shooter. He's not an efficient player by the analytics wave. But at the same time, he's a guy that can finish in transition, run a 4-3, and can substantially run an offense in the half court. He's explosive. He can dunk. I've seen if you look up his highlight tape, he's finished in a variety of ways. I just think his issues are Offensively, he kind of dribbles into double teams sometimes. He doesn't really have a good pace to his game. I think if you look at a young player that does have good pace, one in Jordan Clarkson is a player. If you look at him, he's got good pace to his game. He knows when to break, knows when to pull up, knows when to go to the rim. That's something that I think Mudiay can improve on. But he projects defensively to be an all-star. 6'6" point guard, you can switch off. In the finals, you saw Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. They switch off all the fucking time. That's kind of the new wave of the NBA. And I think he's able to do that. He's got a 6'9" wingspan. He's just a big guard. So I think he can lead the Sacramento Kings in the right direction. And while I think they need a 4 at this position, I think they would have loved to have Porzingis fall to them to play alongside Boogie. I think this is what they got, and, just fucking roll with it.
Make the best of it. Next up, we have the Denver Nuggets.
We're back to odd numbers, boys.
Another West team who went 30-52. Just a quick insight. They 2009, what was that, 6 years ago? They had their biggest push, and they made it to the Melo was on the team. The farthest Melo has ever gotten in his career in terms of playoff status. He met Kobe in the Western Conference Finals, and they ended up losing the series.
Obviously, they fucking lost.
4-2.
And they had a good year in 2011, I believe. George Karl, the coach of the Sacramento Kings, ironically, won Coach of the Year, and then they fired him. Again, another front office that has made questionable decisions. Brian Shaw was a bad coach. Whether or not he's a good player and whether or not he's respected in the community, he was not a good coach. And I think if you look at their roster, they got Fareed, they got Nurkic, they got Will Barton, they got Ty Lawson, who's a keeper. Like I said, Nurkic is a keeper. Fareed is okay. He's got a bad contract, but I think he's a legit NBA player. He could be an all-star. They got Gallinari and Wilson Chandler. They're kind of stacked at the wing. So I think if you look at their roster, their fucking starting point guard is who is it?
Ty Lawson.
Who's their starting shooting guard?
Randy Foye.
Sorry, I'm a little drunk. Fucking Randy Foye.
Randy Foye.
Randy Foye. I don't even know how to spell Randy Foye. It's Randy Foye. You're not going to win in the Western Conference with Randy Foye as your starting shooting guard. So with that being said, I decided to pick Super Mario, another EuroLeague player, 19 years old, Mario Hazenija. I think I'm saying that right. I don't give a shit. He's probably not going to watch this. He's out of Croatia. He played for FC Barcelona, one of the best teams in Euroball. I think they're in the playoffs right now. Played limited minutes, shot over 40% from 3. This is a guy that's very versatile, and you're looking at the upside more than the production. He's 6'8". He's got a 6'10" wingspan. He can play either wing position again with the switching off. He had a game where he was 8 of 8 from 3. That's very impressive no matter where you are or what you're doing. I mean, you couldn't even go to the Y or the fucking fair and have one of those games doing in Jersey. It's very hard to go 8 of 8. And I think if you look at his highlight tape, there's videos of him catching alley-oops. There's videos of him crossing people and going to the rim and finishing over people, over contested bigs. And there's videos of him coming off screens like Klay Thompson and hitting threes. He was a very versatile player. Again, you're going off the hype and not necessarily the production. So that's why I decided to upgrade the shooting guard position over fucking Randy Foye. So,
all right.
Back to you.
Next up, we have the Detroit Pistons, who they reached their peak back in 2004 when they beat the Lakers in the finals 4-1. That team was stacked,
Yes.
and I mean stacked.
Across the board.
Rip Hamilton, the Wallace brothers, Ben Wallace and
Rasheed
Wallace, Tayshaun Prince.
Either way,
Big Shot Billups, Larry Brown coaching them.
Yes, either way, they were a very good team.
They whooped the Lakers.
They whooped the Lakers with Kobe and Shaq. They went to
Yes.
6 straight Eastern Conference Finals, which is something that LeBron's only done since as an individual player. I think if you look at their team, ever since 2009, they've gone downhill. Stan Van Gundy's in the office. He knows what the fuck he's doing. They just got Ersan Ilyasova. I think Monroe's going to walk. They have cap room. They got a nice thing going with the pick and roll between Reggie Jackson and Andre Drummond. But I think if you look at their team, they literally do not have a starting small forward on their roster.
So, with that being said, I have them taking Justice Winslow.
The small forward from Duke played alongside Tyus Jones and Jahlil Okafor, the number 1 overall pick. He was highly regarded. Dude's fucking Adonis. He's got a fucking body. If I walked into my house and he was fucking my girlfriend, I would let him fuck my girlfriend. He could probably bench 325. This dude is jacked. He shot over 40% from 3. He's versatile. He can defend. I think that's where he's going to make his money early on, especially with Stan Van Gundy teams, is he likes to defend. He constantly says, I either like smart players that shoot or defenders. So I think he can fill a need. They don't have a small forward, as I said. And he's a good player, shot over 40% from three, and a lot of us watched the NCAA tournament, and he stepped up, so I like the pick.
All right, on to you next.
Number 9. Number 9 is the Charlotte Hornets, team that's been in fluctuation. They have a good coach in Steve Clifford. MJ's coaching the team, obviously one of the worst players ever. But they're all right. They got Kemba at the 1. They recently just got rid of Lance Stevenson, the headache, so that's good. They got Matt Barnes and
Spencer Hawes.
Spencer Hawes, the big fucking hipster, wherever he's fucking weird. But either way, I think they got a logjam at the front court positions. They got Al Jefferson, they got Cody Zeller, they got Spencer Hawes. At the wing position, they're set with MKG. Whether or not that's a good pick, and whether or not we both agree that MKG is worth the second overall pick behind Anthony Davis, I don't. Do you? He doesn't fucking know. He's drunk. They got to stick with it. And if I look at their roster, after getting rid of Lance Stevenson, the only shooting guard they have is PJ Hairston. So I think with this pick, it was rather easy to take Devin Booker, another Kentucky prospect, a shooting guard from Kentucky. He's actually the youngest player in the draft. On top of that, he ran one of the fastest agility times recorded at the Combine. I think it's the best in the past 5 years. And what I look at is when you're evaluating a prospect, someone that's labeled as a shooter, he is the best shooter in the draft. He's got his stroke, his fucking shot. I could jerk off to his shot. It is gorgeous. It's repeatable. It's compact, and it's quick. He's 6'6". As I said, he's agile. He's young. He can come off screens. I think you're taking this pick again like Kazenija off hype and not production. He's a guy that shot over 40%. He's well coached. He can finish in transition, and he hit big shots. If you watch the tape against Texas A&M, he had 24 points, and he hit an and one in overtime. He's a clutch player. I think you develop him. I think down the road, this is a player that people will regret passing on. And I think while you won't get production right now, I think that this is a player that maybe 3 or 4 years from now that could put up 18 with 45% shooting from three. No one would really bat an eye. So I think it was kind of obvious to fill that need, and I like the pick. So, Coors Light.
Solid. Next, we have the Miami Heat. Might I mention, just 2 years ago, they were NBA champions.
And now,
2 years later, they're in the draft lottery. That just goes to show how quickly
and they have good coaching.
How quickly 2 years can change a franchise, change a team, change the overall atmosphere of a city. And that's what makes sports great.
I'm sure there's still titties on South Beach, but either way,
South Beach
what's going on inside, that arena is completely different from what it was 24 months ago. So with that being said, you look at their roster, they're in the East, they didn't win a lot of games. What do you think some of their weaknesses are?
Obviously, they have Chalmers, who is all right, all-star caliber, not so much maybe. They have Wade, who is nearing the...
Obviously, it's Wade.
Obviously, it's Wade. He's nearing the end of his career, but he can still produce when needed. So, they have Dang, who's a good pickup for them last season.
He's overpaid a little and he's old.
He's a good forward, though. He can shoot, he can create more, shots for his teammates. Coming off, they got Bosch, who they just gave a max deal for.
They overpaid. They gave a mellow deal to Bosch, but he actually played too before he had the blood clot. I actually wish him well. He looks like a fucking dinosaur, but either way, I wish him well. And they got Hassan Whiteside, who was a revelation at the 5. So I think with Bosch and Whiteside, if you're picking top 10, that's set. You go to the wing and down. So with that being said,
I have them picking Stanley Johnson.
Stanley Johnson is a wing from Arizona. He's 6'7", 250. This is the guy that went to the LeBron camp and challenged LeBron one-on-one. He's got a body like LeBron. I think if you look at him from just the eye test, he's probably the most successful in the draft. There's not a lot of wing players that are 19 that are 6'7", 250 and have room to bulk. He's got a 6'11 wingspan. He can defend. To me, he projects to be Andre Iguodala, a stopper, a versatile stopper whose offensive game will come in stretches. He shot over 40%. He shot over 40% from three. But at the same time, I think that's a little skewed. The college game's less. It's a shorter line. At the same time, he didn't really attempt that many. With that being said, I think his money is being made on the defensive end, and I think you take his offensive limitations and just run with him. For instance, against Wisconsin in the tournament with Sam Decker and Kaminsky, who will be on the list soon, he only scored 6 points. He can be shut out against not even subpar caliber or defenders or athletic, players that line up against next to him. So at the same time, you're really just going off defense. You're not really going off his offensive versatility. But down the road, this could be a Larry Johnson all-star. So.
And going off that, since he's a defensive-minded player, the Heat could really use that type of persona in their locker room and in their atmosphere. Because as every sports fan or sports fanatic knows, best defense is a good offense, and best defense wins games.
Especially in basketball, where you block a shot, it goes off the backboard, it's at half court, you're running in transition. Basketball is probably the most applicable to that statement, where if you get a good stop, a shot clock violation, a block shot, a steal, you're immediately on offense, and the hoop's right there. And if you look at just to rambling a little, if you look at the Heat, they play an aggressive defense, and on top of that, they don't really have a lot of defenders in their lineup. You think Wade, you think offense, you think Bosch, you think offense. I mean, Hassan Whiteside can block shots, and Chalmers, you think offense. So I think getting a defender in there who can take minutes away from Dang and Wade, who need the fucking rest, I think that helps. So I like the pick.
Moving on.
Pick number 11. I was tasked with the Indiana Pacers, the most boring fucking team in the NBA. It's unfortunate what happened to Paul George. They have a decent, very. It was. I watched it live. Almost threw up on myself. My girlfriend almost broke up with me. It was fucked up. It was a fucked up situation. They have an okay roster. They're very well coached. And Frank Vogel, Larry Bird knows what the fuck he's doing. I think if you look at this team, they got George Hill at the 1. He's overpaid, but you're set there. At the 2, you got Rodney Stuckey, who played very well last year, former Piston, and you got C.J. Miles, who they signed to a big deal, who can hit threes. Again, you bite the bullet. Whatever it is what it is. You're set there. At the 3, they have some talent there. I mean, Paul George is coming off an injury. I don't necessarily know that you want to spend a lottery pick on a backup. And then at the 4, you have Scola and Mahimi, both people that literally sound like dishes at an Italian restaurant. They're both past their prime, underproducing, and need someone else to take their spot next to Hibbert, because Hibbert, God knows, is a limitation offensively. So with that being said, I decided to take Frank Kaminsky, college basketball player of the year, over 40% from 3, over 7 feet tall. I think if he was 19, he'd be a top 5 pick. The fact is he's 22 and he was a senior, and loyalty and learning from a good coach shouldn't necessarily hurt you, but that's today's NBA, and that's kind of where the social media has gone. I think if you look at him, I think he's an Ersan Ilyasova on steroids. I think he's a guy that could potentially put up 19 and 11, but he could also potentially just be an 8 and 7 guy off the bench, but he can shoot 40% from 3. I mean, you can't take away from the fact that he shot over 40% from 3, and his 3-pointers were almost half of his shots.
It's also good to have a big man who can shoot and take the pressure off Hibbert, who everyone speculates as being an overrated center. He has his ups and downs, but
and I mean, they complement each other. It's inside out. Hibbert can't do shit within 5 feet of the hoop, and Kaminsky can basically shoot 3-pointers from half court. So I think they complement each other.
And also a little side note, just like I said with the Miami Heat, who were recently they were recently a championship team a couple of years ago. The Pacers took the Heat to 7 games in the Eastern Conference Finals when LeBron was running full course with Wade and Bosh. So they were a good-ass physical competitive team. So obviously with Indiana being a traditional basketball city,
slow pace,
Larry Bird coaching them, they're a traditional team that knows basketball, and for them to be back on that stage would be great for the city and for the fans.
And I think taking a Big Ten Wisconsin Player of the Year, media mogul, and Frank Kaminsky, whether or not you like him, you know who he is. I think it just fits what Larry Bird is trying to do in the way that the Pacers try to play basketball. So,
moving on in this lineup, the Utah Jazz, who went 38 and 44 just this past season. Mediocre for the West. Obviously,
they were in the East. They probably would have made the playoffs,
right? Because the East sucks dick. Mm-hmm. You can have a losing record but still make the playoffs. The West, that doesn't fly. Anyway, the Utah Jazz, they've been hovering around, the 5 to 8 seed for a good 5-6 years now.
A while. Probably 20 years, ever since Jerry Sloan was there for a while. Ever since he left, we've kind of had a turnstile at head coach, but at the same time,
back then they were maybe even 4 seed up high then, but they have a young core, and
Gordon Hayward, Alec Burks, Rudy Gobert. They have a pretty good young nucleus comparable to what. Not necessarily as good of a team, but what the Lakers are doing, and that they have young pieces that can really step in and play.
So obviously, their bigs are fine. Derek Favors,
good player.
Gordon Hayward, up and coming, young potential.
Poor man's LeBron, white boy.
White boy can fucking ball.
He's got good hair. Can probably fuck mad pussy any day he wants.
Their main weakness. Okay, point guard. Trey Burke.
Dude is 5'9".
What was that one
maybe.
game he had? 1 of 11?
1 of 11 from 3. I think once you go 1 of 5, you should there should be something in your head that says, "Wow, I should probably stop throwing the ball randomly."
Or
at the
maybe
rim."
pass the ball more instead of taking shots and going 1 of 11 and looking like a fucking dumbass.
I think he was like 2 of 17 that game. I mean, literally look at it. And this was a top 10 pick. I mean, I just think it's another situation where hype dictates where someone goes. I mean, if you look at it as it is, Trey Burke is a 5'10" point guard. Immediately can't defend. And you have to rely on him to either be a Steve Nash-like creator, which he's fucking not, or a Steve Nash-like shooter, which he's fucking not.
It just goes to show the transition from pro to college.
Yes.
Seeing as how Trey Burke was the National College Player of the
At
Year,
Michigan.
who played in the National Championship, being in the draft. Yeah, not the same story. So it takes progression and it takes growth. That being said, a point guard is in a desired need for the Utah Jazz. I have them taking Cameron Payne.
I mean, they took Trey Burke in 2013. They took Dante Exum last year, and it's funny because they spent 2 top 10 picks on point guard, and that actually happens to be their biggest need and their biggest weakness. Not to say I think I think both of them have a role in the NBA. I just think Trey Burke is a 7th or 8th man somewhere in the East as a spot-up shooter and a guy that can hit clutch shots, and I think Dante Exum is 3 years away from being anything respectable on the offensive end. So Cameron Payne, obviously, point guard from Murray State. He led the Racers to a 28-game winning streak, which is obviously fucking impressive. I don't care if you're playing curling or if you're playing Little League Baseball in fucking Idaho. 28 straight wins is very impressive. And, I mean, there's no one around him. He put up 20 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists around a team that literally probably doesn't have one D-League prospect. So if you think about if he was on Duke or if he was on a not a mid-major program, he probably would have averaged 25 with 10 assists because there's people around him that can actually do their fucking job. He's 6'2", 180. He's a smaller guy, but he's got great vision. He's smart, and he's probably the most NBA-ready point guard. D'Angelo Russell's more of a combo guard. We discussed that. Moutier's a little ways out from being good offensively. I think Cameron Payne I don't think he'll last this long, to be honest, in the real draft. I think someone will take a chance on him. He's a good player, and I think he could be an all-star down the road. So I like the Jazz. If you have a weakness, fuck the critics. Just keep stockpiling on it, and maybe you'll hit on one of those 3 players. So,
Moving on next.
Next up is the Phoenix Suns at number 13. This is a team that had Jeff Hornacek. They're in the West. If you don't win 50... In the West, if you're not in the top 5, you need to fucking figure yourself out because there's no way that you can consistently be an 8 seed in the West nowadays with all the teams. I mean,
You need to win at least 40 to 45 games to be even
contender.
To be even in the 7 or 8 spot. The Oklahoma City Thunder and the New Orleans Pelicans both won 45 games, tiebreaker, and they got squeaked in as the 8th seed.
And then they got swept.
In the East, that shit doesn't happen.
If you win 45 games in the East, you're a 5 seed. But,
Yes.
But my point being is that they need to kind of, while I think this one pick isn't going to help them, I think they need to do a couple more wheels and deals. I don't like the Gorgon Dragic deal. I like that they have blood. So my point being is that they kind of are in the same position as some of these lower teams where they just need to infuse talent wherever it is. If they get another center, they get another 4, 5, 3, 2, 1, whatever the fuck it is, 6. I don't care. They need talent on that team. With that being said, I kind of just looked at my board and who was the best available for what they needed, not to create a logjam. They took T.J. Warren last year, so that kind of clogs up the wing. I decided to take Miles Turner, the center, power forward from Texas. This was a prep prospect, a top 5 guy. He's got weird-ass legs. He's got boat-ass legs. It's kind of hard for him to run. I read an article on Bleacher Report that said that he was looked at by doctors, and they basically evaluated him and came to a determination that he's got some muscle groups in his legs and hips that are weaker than the rest of him, and that he needs to improve on that strength to be able to run efficiently. Like, watch him run. He looks like a chicken. It's weird, and I don't mean to offend him. He's a good basketball player. He can step out and shoot. He's tall, and he has a lot of instincts to block shots, similar to Karl Anthony Towns. But there's issues with like a Brandon Roy situation where he's got degenerative knees. Turner might have degenerative lower half where his hips don't align with his knees, which don't align with his ankles, which makes his thighs, whatever the fucking situation is. It's a risk, But he's the best player on the board, and they need help at the 4 next to the Morris twins because I don't think both of them are going to be around by the end of next year. So he was just the best guy on my board.
Moving on, we have OKC, Oklahoma City Thunder,
Wrapping this up.
Western Conference team. We're on the last leg of the stretch. This team has been known as the West top tier team, the West competitors. Mm-hmm. That was before they had the two biggest players have injuries. That is Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. Also, they have the player who had 10 straight triple-doubles last season, which is an NBA record. And if you do not know who that is, I just named his persona
said his name
15 seconds ago. If you still don't know who that is, then you need to fucking read a book, get off your ass, and watch some TV.
And considering that it's Russell Westbrook, spoiler, and
the dude is explosive.
And they still didn't even make the playoffs. Like they again, similar to the Jazz,
which is scary.
Similar to Phoenix, they have some pieces. I think they need to take the best available talent and then kind of figure it out 10 games in. I mean, they got a new coach in Billy Donovan. Scott Brooks was a god-awful coach. I mean, he's like, yeah, run an ISO again. Yeah, same side. Oh, what's a 2-for-1 with 40 seconds left? Like, the guy was terrible. I'm sorry, I don't mean to offend him. I kind of do. He was terrible.
And another thing that's scary for the West, this team they didn't make the playoffs. They almost squeaked in. Russell Westbrook was considered an MVP candidate, playing 27 games. Injury. 10 straight triple-doubles. That's scary. He's not even near his prime. The dude is a fucking explosive beast who can take over any time.
I still think if you're an OKC fan, I think you should be worried about Durant. That's not really. You need another beer. That's not necessarily.
Thanks. Of course.
As being an outside fan, people are like, "Oh, KD, he's fine." Blah blah blah. KD only played 27 games last year. That's a fucking problem. Like if a star player on any other team is playing 27 games. You're worried. He might not be able to come back to where he once was. And I mean, he's a player. You look at his ankles. He's a very lanky player. He's a very skinny player. And his feet probably are under a lot of stress. And he's had that screw in his foot tweaked like 3 or 4 times in the past couple of years. And it finally caught up with him. I just think you take, again, best available player and you find out the kinks. Russell Westbrook, obviously, is a talent you're not going to let leave. KD wants to do his own thing. You can get the fuck out. So with that being said,
I have them taking Kelly Oubre.
If you look at their roster at the wing position, not even the wing position, obviously KD is going to have his spot cemented along with Russ at the 1. So you look at the 2 and the 4. The NBA nowadays is more of a small ball lineup. That's what the Warriors are successful with. If you look at the 2, they got Dion Waiters, who just fucking jacks up contested mid-range 2s. That's his thing. Maybe 30% of them go in. So I think you could upgrade at the 2 or someone on the wing position. And then if you look at the 4, I think they could use someone that could bump KD maybe to the 4 and then come in at the 3 and take minutes off of him. So Kelly Oubre is a 6'7" wing, McDonald's All-American, Kansas player. He kind of fell out of Bill Self's lineup. I mean, I don't know why. Maybe he fucked his girlfriend. I don't know why. But he didn't play that much towards the end of the year. Maybe it was the mid-stretch. But either way, he's a 37% three-point shooter. He's a classic, prototypical 3-and-D player. Doesn't really have a dribble game, can't really finish around the rim, but he's lanky, he can shoot threes, and he can defend. That's where his bread and butter is. That's where he's going to make his money his first 5 years is playing defense. And I think if you look at him and you compare him to someone that's a young Trevor Ariza, who's nowadays probably the poster child for a 3-and-D player. Trevor Ariza has constantly been around the block, hitting threes wherever he goes, and playing defense wherever he goes. He's got a great defensive proficiency, and I think Kelly Oubre could project to be that. And he's not even done growing. He could grow another 2-3 inches and be able to help KD at the 3 and 4 position. So I like the pick a lot. With that being said, we're almost wrapping this shit up here, boys and girls.
Last one.
Last pick in the lottery of 2015 NBA draft is the Atlanta Hawks. Obviously, what did they finish? 60.
I got this, bro. They went 60-22. They're an Eastern Conference team. They locked up the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference and made it to the Eastern Conference Finals, where they would get swept by the Cleveland Cavaliers 4-0. So, call it a fluke, call it what you want. Injuries were a problem. They had Kyle Korver shooting 50% from threes, which is fucking unbelievable. The dude is white and he can stroke it from downtown.
And he wears high socks and he's from Creighton.
They had 4 All-Stars on the team.
I mean,
which people would say that's overrated, but they knew how to fucking ball. The record speaks for itself.
I mean, for context, if you
No.
look at the team where they are, Kyle Korver's set at the 2 with Kent Bazemore. Kent Bazemore is a guy that Kent Bazemore is a development prospect kind of guy. They want to see how he'll project.
And my fault. I'm just, last. Obviously, Eastern Conference Finals, Korver got injured, Damari Kell got injured, their best defensive player, and obviously the guy who was leading the team in points per game in the playoffs.
Uh-huh.
You have those two players leave, you don't have a shot.
But at the same time, I think that they do need to improve. I don't think that a jump shot. The Warriors won this year, but at the same time, the Atlanta Hawks are a poor man's Warriors in the fact that they run small ball and everyone on the floor can shoot jump shots. I just think that they need to kind of change it up and infuse themselves with talent. I think that if you look at the team, the 1 is set. They got Jeff Teague and Schroeder. Schroeder's probably, if he doesn't get the start, if Schroeder isn't getting starter minutes in the next 18 months, I think he's out the door. Or he's a starter in the NBA is my point. The 1's set. The 2, as I talked about. The 3 they could use help on. Carroll's a free agent. He's probably going to get overpaid somewhere else. He's a 28-year-old. He had a career year, but at the same time, if I'm a GM, I'm not going to pay a guy $12 million till he's 33. That never works out. It never does, like sports contracts, like the A-Rod contract, like anything in any sport. You always overpay. So I think that they needed help with the 3, and I think that their front court set, they got Horford and they got Millsap. Whether or not they're healthy, whether or not they're overpaid, they're good for a year. They can get them through and be adequate and above adequate. So with that being said, the best player on my board who filled a need was Sam Decker, the running mate of Kaminsky, the fucking most white people on earth, Wisconsin natives. He's 21 years old. Not a lot of, he has upside. He's 20-1, but at the same time, compared to Devin Booker, who's 18, the upside is limited. But the dude's 6'9", 210. He's lanky. He can play defense, and he knows his role. Bo Ryan's a great coach at Wisconsin, and he kind of allows his players to develop and accentuate their strengths and diminish their weaknesses. And I think he knows what he's good at. He doesn't, and he knows what he's not good at, and he doesn't put himself in those positions. And I think he could come in and help the Hawks immediately. The Hawks don't necessarily have a guy that's 6'9", 6'10", that can defend 1 through 4, that can shoot a 3 anytime they need him to. So I think if DeMarre Carroll leaves, they get Sam Decker and maybe sign someone. I think that they fill that void immediately. So with that being said, that basically wraps
things up. No pun intended. We like
sexual
to have fun.
condom joke.
Anyway, thanks for staying tuned. That was our insight as we said in the beginning
If you
of this
watch
video.
this till the end, I fuck with you. Fucking add me on
Yes.
Twitter and IG. Like I said, rate, comment, subscribe, do whatever the fuck you got to do. Jerk off to my
And
gorgeous
if you guys
jawline.
want to stick with more, see more videos, follow us. We're social media savvy. Follow us on IG and Twitter. We will put that info in our description.
This is getting long-winded, but my point is, if you're watching this, I fuck with you. If not, stay tuned for videos. There you have it, our 2015 mock draft, 1 through 15. Comment. Please get in an argument with me. I love to argue. I have nothing to do. My girlfriend is long distance. I need something to do. So please, again, comment, rate, subscribe, and we'll be able to have a conversation with you. Appreciate it.
It'll make our day.
Peace!